Hello, everyone, and welcome. I am Aygün Süleymanova, and I'm part of the platform product marketing team here at Salesforce. But it's not product that we're going to talk about today, because I have three of our engineering executives here at Salesforce who are building our products to talk to us about how they once were developers and became engineering executives, how they got out of the world of code and creation and into the world of people management, leadership, and strategy. They still love code, by the way, but so let me introduce you to our executives, and then we'll get started. I have Ritu here, who's been at Salesforce for 6 years. She's leading a team of engineering for Sales Cloud and is working hard to deliver all the cool Einstein and Lightning features to you every day. Her team works. And we have Stephen Tam, who's been at Salesforce for 13 years now. Stephen, more or less, Stephen has been right now is focused on the technical strategy to unify the users, admins, and developers experience, and is leading a team of more than 200 engineers. And Stephen, both Ritu and Stephen, and in fact Cheryl as well, have started their careers as engineers. And Cheryl works on one of the coolest products here at Salesforce on Salesforce.org. Working hard to deliver higher ed and nonprofit products inside Salesforce. And she has been at Salesforce for 12 years now. And without much ado, I'd like to go ahead and have our guests tell us a little about their journey. But before, I would like you all to start, and I'll start with you, Ritu, with a fun fact about yourself, and then you can tell us what that journey was like from developer to engineer, and what was one breakthrough moment that was kind of a defining moment where you became a true leader.
Hi, everyone. So fun fact, I was on the US women's cricket team, and I represented US in 2011 in the World Cup qualifiers.
Wow, I did not know that.
Yep. And so you want my journey?
Yes.
Okay. So
and a breakthrough moment in there.
Okay. So I started as a SAP ABAP 4 developer. Who knows ABAP 4? It's like long time ago. I was in...
There, at SAP?
I was not at SAP, but I
was.
You.
Oh.
And so I did a couple of implementations on SAP ABAP 4, and then eventually Oracle hired me in India. At that time, anyone who knew Oracle or SAP or whatever that sounded like was in. And so I joined Oracle India in 2001, sorry. And at that time, there was nothing in Hyderabad. There was just like one building that stood in High Tech City. And so I remember I walk in, and there's this huge building, and I'm standing outside. This is November 22nd. I still remember that day. And I was like, what did I do? I don't know a soul here. I do not know the language. They did not speak Hindi or English. I did not know what I was doing away from everything that I cared for. And then I was like, what are you thinking? This is Oracle. This is your make or break. You can take it or you can leave it. And I took it, and for the next 6 years, it was great. I just worked, I made friends, and I used to joke that I worked, slept, and worked out. And that's all I did for the next 6 years. And then they moved me here in 2007 to take over a big group in their core financials area. And so I moved in 2007. In 2011, a colleague who was at Salesforce was like, you should come talk to us. So I came and I talked to Salesforce. And I don't know if Steve remembers, but he was on my interview panel. Yeah.
Sorry.
Well, thank you. And so he was on my interview panel, and Cheryl, in fact, was a huge leader in that area where I was joining. And these both people have I've really been role models for me. And this forum actually is a big deal for me because I'm sitting with them here. Yeah, it is a big deal.
Right.
And now 6 years later and 3-4 promotions, I'm sitting here.
Great, awesome, thank you. Steven, your turn.
I would say that my road was a little non-traditional. So I used to work at that large company in Waldorf, and then I was a partner of another German company who built a Siebel integration with DRM. Before that, I did CPQ for years, and if anybody has any stories about Trilogy software, we can talk about it afterwards. But about 12 years ago, that German company laid off everybody in America, and I had a choice, which was to move to Waterloo, Canada, which my wife was not into because she's a California native, or we moved to Munich, which my wife was kind of into because she speaks German, or I get a new job. And so this was 2004, and I was done playing poker, because I used to play poker professionally. That's another story. And I needed health insurance. That's my fun fact. I used to play poker professionally. Now I wouldn't, because there'd be whatever Obamacare is going to turn into. So I went and interviewed at 3 companies, Apple, Google, and Salesforce. And I ended up taking Salesforce as, I would say, one of the first 20 people that worked on the actual platform. At the time, there were about 45 maybe in engineering, but most people worked on clients, offline, Word, Outlook integration, and I was one of the first 3 people on the API. And then I worked my way through the platform, and then I ended up, my story is, when somebody comes to you and gives you an opportunity, you should take it, even if you think you can't do it. And so I said, hey, we are about to buy this CPQ stuff that turned into what you know as Force.com checkout. We don't know what the hell's going on. They want to spend $25 million on it, and I think it's dumb. And my boss at the time, Steve Fisher, who's now the CTO of eBay, was like, you should go figure that out. And I was like, I really don't want to do it, but I got to do it. So I went and did that, and then I went and did a bunch of M&A, and then we started the CTO program. And so I was the CTO of CRM, even though I was on the platform, and then I was CTO of the company for about 4 years. And then about a year and a half ago, I decided to switch from being sort of an IC architect-y role to being a manager, which is weird, and we'll get into more of that later. But that's sort of my journey to how I ended up running core engineering.
That's awesome, Steve.
Cheryl?
I think Steve was the first developer I worked with at Salesforce. Yeah. I remember walking down the aisle.
Sorry.
I know. Thank you for apologizing. That was it was rough. So I went through the kind of, but now it's great. No, it's great now. It's been great for a while. My sort of path from engineer to manager, leader, executive, I went through that twice. The company I worked at before, which was called Digital Think, which is pretty long gone, and then again at Salesforce. And when I came to Salesforce, I really wanted to start as an engineer. It was kind of the only option open to me at the time anyway. But I really wanted to have some experience with the product, really understand it, really understand the work my team was doing before I got into management. So I could just really understand the work, which is what I did. It was probably about 6 to 8 months in when, at that time, my boss had about 20 directs. I don't think had gone on vacation since she started at Salesforce. It was pretty intense, and wanted to go away, finally on a vacation, and made myself and another one of my colleagues manager. And that was the kind of the beginning, and over the next, 8.5 years of really working with her and for her, just continued to grow in my career. I mean, Salesforce was just growing by leaps and bounds, and as long as you were willing to really, what Steve was saying, take any opportunity offered to you, stretch yourself, continually learn. It's an amazing opportunity. So for me, being a manager was one thing. I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed connecting with individuals on my team, really helping them in their careers. I enjoyed those early days of, we had lived through the Scrum transformation, the Agile transformation. I actually enjoyed it, I know. Steven, not so much, but I did.
It was great. It just took a year.
Yeah, it took a while. But But I really enjoyed that. And then, so what ended up happening was I went from about a team of about 20 or 30, which I was quite comfortable with, and we had to reorg. And my team grew significantly. It was going to go to like the 70, 80 number. And I was really intimidated by that. I felt comfortable connecting individually with people, but I wasn't sure how I was going to scale that and really run a team, motivate and inspire a team when I couldn't have that one-on-one connection. But my aha moment, my sort of moment in my career where I feel like I really got the difference between being a manager and being an executive was during that reorg. One of the managers that was like a peer of mine was going to move under me. And I was really like notoriously tough on my peers. Some of them I found a bit disappointing. I know Steven's laughing. And so I could be kind of a jerk, frankly,
Don't laugh too long.
to some of my peers because I felt like they weren't living up to the expectations, right? So this one individual was going to move under me, and so I had my first one-on-one with them, and I said, now that you report to me, I'm going to be a lot nicer to you. And as soon as I said that, like as soon as those words came out of my mouth, I was like, wow, what an asshole. Like, you're an asshole, frankly. Like, I just could not get over why do we even have that idea in my head that just because you're over there, like, I don't care about you, and I don't care about you being successful. So that was the pivot for me. Like, I grew up, and I just realized, I was just an arrogant jerk, and I needed to get over that. But and really everything about the way I led from then on was very different. Like, it was a real aha moment because I felt like a complete and utter jerk and just caught, blindly having been that. So everything changed from then, where I treat everyone like they're a part of my team and someone I care about and someone I want to be successful. We're all working towards our, for the benefit of our customers.
And that's a great learning, right? As you go up the chain, you realize that there is a whole network of support you need to build. That's part of the whole executive,
exactly.
requirements.
When you're an exec, you care about the business, you care about your customers, you don't care about,
That's great. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about, and how many of you here are in the room like developers and IC, individual contributors? Okay, great. Okay, so I know that for an IC, and especially if you're hands-on, when you switch to managing people, there are so many like rookie manager mistakes you make. So many, like, it's hard making that switch, especially if you're a coder and creator, and all of a sudden you're dealing with people. So tell us about some of the very interesting mistakes you made during that early period, and that created a lot of the greatest teaching moment for you as a leader down the road. Let's talk about those interesting moments.
Start with me?
Yeah.
Okay.
As usual.
Thank you. So I remember this time where I'd just taken a job at Salesforce, and it was not my transition from IC to manager, but it was a big transition because I used to manage a very big team at Oracle, but here it was more about fewer things and doing them really well, so it was more about impact. And so I come into this job, and I think a month into the job, I call this lead engineer on my team, and I tell her, this is messed up. I want you to do this to change it, and I want it done by this time, and I want it to be done no other way than what I'm telling you to do.
Great.
And she listened to me, and she went, and she did it. A month later, my boss's boss called me, and she was like, what have you been doing? I was like, I've been correcting these mistakes that these guys have been doing. They don't have a plan. They don't know what they're testing. They don't know what, their definition of done is. They're not like caring about the customer. Like, yeah, but you totally broke the very principles that we live by. You gave her no context. You gave her nothing to go by, and you just told her what to do. You minimized her to this much. And that was a big moment for me to realize that, it's not about you have all this knowledge. It's not about you doing it. It's about enabling them. And even if they fail, it's fine. You need to allow people to fail and still have their back.
Thank you.
Mine's going to be weird. There's a bunch of them, but
Surprise.
the people on stage will find this funny. So I went from being the CTO of the company and doing a lot of M&A and going and doing Dreamforce and Gartner and all that. And then I went on a vacation. I came back, and I didn't say I wanted to be a manager. I said I wanted to be a different type of leader. I had this with my boss yesterday. And I had been trying to advocate for things to change around the architecture. I've been trying to advocate for things to change in terms of capital allocation, and I realized the way that you can fix that is by controlling budget. And so I kind of went to Srini, who is my boss now, and I said, I don't want to work for Parker, I want to work for you. And I want to have a team of people so that I can actually get what I want to get done, because I care about the stock price and the customers. I don't really care about how many people I manage or what my next job is. And he was like, that's great. And so then I started doing it, and I went from being sort of an EVP, having like weekly meetings with Mark, to going into budget discussions that seemed interminable, and capital allocation and roster and headcount, and I sort of lost my way. And what you usually do if you're an IC is you go talk to people and you're like, hey, how do you do this? How do you do that? And so I was relying, in a sense, on my peers to help me out. And then they started taking advantage of that. And I had my boss come to me and say, you're being too timid. You're not being loud enough. You're not asserting yourself enough. You got to fake it till you make it. And I looked at him, and if anybody knows me, that's like the dumbest thing you've ever heard in life. And I was like, well, what happened? It was like, you have to have more confidence in your abilities. Like, nobody has ever said that to me. And it was because when you are doing capital allocation, advocate for your team, advocate for your people, advocate for what you think is right, and assume that your boss has your back. It's not because they were doing the wrong thing, but they saw, oh, you don't know how to manage this headcount thing? Well, I'll just take that. Because they have their requirements and their needs. So fake it till you make it was the advice that I got on becoming a manager. The other part has to do with not being a seagull or management by mushroom guy, but we can get to that later.
Yeah.
I already came clean on my
Yeah.
my big mess.
Yeah, totally. And you told about the seagull. I remember our conversation about like the leadership styles, and everybody at some point defines what kind of a leader they are. And it's especially important in your roles, as you, as a leader, your job is to manage and deliver the product, because you have very concrete deliverables, but also inspire your teams to innovate. Because to the people in the room, it's so important that your teams innovate, which they do. So I wanted to ask you about the leadership style that you have developed, what it is, and how have you developed it?
Okay, I go again?
You go again?
Okay.
Or yes, actually,
I just
Cheryl,
have some
it's
of
your
my
turn.
direct reports in the room who are like, all right, let's hear what your leadership style is. Yeah, exactly. Well, for me, always, it's been about the people on my team. And, my whole thing is I want to be the unblocker. How do I help you sort of get done what you need to get done? I have an amazing team that is, you're truly amazing team that Kevin has built, and Nick, who's not here, has built. And so how do I, as the executive reporting to the CEO who's having the sort of in the budget wars, how am I making sure that the team is getting what it needs so I understand enough of where we fit in the big picture and can advocate for what we need and making sure we get it, right? So when I showed up at .org 3 or so years ago, we were about 8, I think, on the team, and we're going to end the year at about 70. And that is, yes, we've been growing, and we have a lot of really cool and exciting things going on, but trust me, I go into every quarterly budget meeting with a plan of attack. And the way I describe it to my team is that, you imagine like, the budget is like a pile of money in the middle, and you walk into the room and everyone's kind of fighting over it. You have to be the lion. You just have to come in and out. And this can sound kind of bad, like you don't want to. But to his point, right? You kind of can't be timid, but you have to know too, in your, deep in your sort of brain and heart that you're doing the right thing by the business and the customer. And if you believe that, you are going to go in and say, I am the lion. So quick, funny anecdote was we actually had a situation where our CFO was like, okay, these were your budget asks. Everyone needs to cut back by like this amount of money. And they gave us the amount of money. So come back with like what your plan is for the year based on that. Well, we went and did a bunch of homework. And I came back and said, not only am I not going to cut, I found out I need more. And I did that because I was like, this is the right thing for the business. And then lo and behold, some point they found some extra money and I got it. Now, other people went in and said, okay, I cut back in here. I made all these cuts. Well, it just happened to work out that way, which was kind of awesome. But at the same time, like if you really believe it, you have to kind of go in and advocate, so both representing the team well, and then just anything they need, unblock. I do that all the time. So I try to, I have some good relationships still at Salesforce.com. We end up, because we're kind of an ISV built on top of the platform, that can come in handy. I do sometimes paying some of my colleagues for help. That's a big part of what leadership is.
Hey, when are you going to fix person accounts?
That's funny. Cool. Thank you, Cheryl.
An executive who's in the infrastructure side who is in the meeting I'm supposed to be in today, but instead I'm at DX, said that when you go from managing 5 people to managing 500, what you do changes not fundamentally. It's that the number of levers that you get goes away. So my boss, Srini, says that management is controlling 4 words: the why, the what, the who, and the how. And that as an IC, your job is all about the how. How do I do this? How do I accomplish it? When you go to being a first-level manager, you have to let go of the how. You have to trust your architects and trust your people to do the how. You get much more control over the who. Is this the right person? Is this the right team? Does this match their skill set? So you go from the how to the who. So with 5 to 50 people, it's all about the who. Do I have the right people? Do I have the right team? Do I do the management, managing people out, dealing with the laws of Washington and California and India? Much more of that. Once you get above like 100 people, you don't know the people that work for you. You don't have skip-level reports. There are people that you will see once a year whose budget and management you control. Then you have to do the why and the what. Now, I am lucky in that I control my own product management. Since I build internal products, I don't have to do ACV and try and sell to you people. So I had to justify what I'm doing on productivity grounds or run the business or trust. I run the security team and containers. And so Salesforce is nice because we have the V2 MOM process and everybody has to publish it company-wide. And that is writing down your vision, your values, your methods, and your metrics. And the vision and the values are, in a sense, the why. The methods are the what. And then the metrics are how will people judge your actions. And so at Salesforce, we spend a lot of time as an executive looking at other people's V2 MOMs, figuring out where's the misalignment, why are they not doing what I want them to do? And then we have these weird meetings where I spend a month writing my V2 MOM and figuring out the priorities, because if you write it down and you have a group of 500 people that are looking at what you do, they're not constantly asking you questions about do I do A or B. So you have to spend much more time on the why and the what, and much less on the who. The who is like, do I have the right VPs? Do I have the right executives, the right directors? But that's sort of the transition that I had to do. So my management style is a lot about writing stuff down, writing around long-range plans, writing down the goals for the year, agonizing over should I do this versus that, zero-based budgeting, and a lot of headcount. And so it's sort of the same as what I was doing as an architect, and although I only write code on Thursdays, #codingCTO. Yeah, you've been here before, good. You need to sort of be very careful. Now the problem, the seagull management by mushroom, that's covering you in shit and keeping you in the dark, by the way, is that you spend too much time on the how. Yep. And you got to trust people to do the how. You got to let them make mistakes. And the problems are when you got to intervene a lot on the how, you got to change the who. And so that's sort of how Srini that's sort of the distillation of management that I've gotten here.
Yeah, great.
Wow.
Thank you.
Okay, that was half of what I was going to say. So that's great. That's great. So I would just be quick about this. There are a few things that I'm still learning how to evolve my style, and no one gets it from the beginning. And you learn and you adapt. But few things. Leading with a why, absolutely important. There's a great author called Simon Sinek. I'm a great believer of him. You should watch his TED Talks. It's, you start a conversation with a why. It totally changes the what, the who, the when. Context setting, then, going back to my earlier example, if I would have told the engineer why was I going after changing all of the things that I wanted her to change, it would have been a totally different conversation. That I over-prepare. If I have something, if I have an exec meeting, if I have a presentation, I will sweat it out and I will prepare and I'll over-prepare, and even if it is a 5-minute update, it's fine. I would rather over-prepare than under. And the third is, I always follow up on my words. There are no empty promises. So if you say something, do it. And by that, it could be the smallest of saying, hey, I'll follow up and get back to you. Get back to the people. And even as you are an IC, that credibility that you form as you're working on projects or whatever, that goes a long way.
That's great. Thank you. And thanks for bringing up the V2 Moms, Steven. It's a great way to align for us across the organization, and it's a great way to know who to reach out to if you're working on a cool project. I look up Cheryl and like, let me see what her V2 Mom says there. Would she be interested in what I'm going to go up to her with? So it's a very good way to keep everyone on track and
Just
aligned.
as a sort of a shout out, I know the Trailhead team is here, at least one person I saw. There is a Trailhead on management at Salesforce and the V2 Mom process, and originally they were going to make it internal only, and then a lot of people were like, that's dumb, we should give it to everybody. So if you want more information about how Salesforce does management, for good or for ill, go on to Trailhead and look at the management trail.
Great. Thank you. Awesome. So I have some questions that are a little custom to each of you. Cheryl, before joining the Salesforce.org, you had a role that said the VP of Agile Innovation and Culture. Tell us about it. Like, it's every IT leader's dream to build an agile team and culture. So.
Yeah, it was definitely an interesting role. I think where Salesforce was in its growth at that time, we've always, and I've been away a little bit, so I'm not sure what it's like now, but definitely back then, we were like this just really big startup, that wanted to kind of stay true to its founding, values of being very agile and innovative. But as you grow, it gets really, really challenging. And it's exacerbated by the fact that a lot of the teams are working on the same code base, using the same tools and systems, on the same release train. And when you're dealing with thousands of people working in that way, and you need everyone to kind of be as agile and adept as everyone else, it becomes an issue that needs focus and attention. So that was about 1.5 years of my life. It was interesting. And, a lot of it was consolidating things that were already going on in the organization and run either by different groups or side projects, some of which I had helped launch and ran in my spare time, like Opportunity Open Market, the thing that lets people move from team to team very easily. And it was kind of bringing it together and having some focused attention. And I know that still has been retained as far as bringing all that together, and the focus on agile, remains. The focus on innovation remains, and how do we do that at scale? And what's been so interesting, having gone through 8.5 years of growth with Salesforce. So when I joined, it was just probably a year after Steven. Still just tens of developers probably at that time.
Way less than 100.
Yeah, way less than 100. I know my entire, the entire quality engineering team fit in a tiny conference room when I joined. And to go through all that growth, and then now, and the challenges associated with it, not only from a management and a leadership standpoint, but from an agile and innovation standpoint, and then to go to Salesforce.org, where back to we're responsible for our enterprise applications, so everything we do for our internal business, including, SFA for our sales team, and we have financials and HR and all that. In addition to our systems, we have products that we build and distribute, right, for nonprofits and higher ed. And at the time, we were doing a lot with 8 people. Agile at that point is it's just kind of like the only way you can work, right? Yeah, because in part, there's just not a lot of people, and you just kind of, and it's not very complex. And really, this is the year where, we're, like I said, end of the year at 70, it's starting to get complicated. We have multiple Scrum teams, a lot more coordination, a lot more, discussion around process. So it's been interesting. It's been interesting to watch the team. I'm not getting involved because I definitely like to make room, and we have some great people joining the team from, to help sort of help us with our growing pains, But and so that the insight that I learned from that role is that you have to understand where you are as an organization and just place in the kind of process or the focus that makes sense for where you are. But know that if you're going to continue to grow, you're going to have to get more serious about things like onboarding and things like standards and things
documentation.
like documentation. Yeah, like internal docs.
I'm not there, so
and
not
things like process.
Great, thank you. Stephen, we had this conversation. There are, as an executive, there are priorities, right? You have to manage your stakeholder across, your peers, you have to manage people, and then there is some hands-on stuff that you still like to do. How do you manage priorities?
One thing that everybody should do as a manager is look at your calendar about 2 weeks out and ask yourself, what are you spending time on? And are you doing what is important, what's urgent, or are you doing stuff that's just you're doing because you're doing? And sort of my priorities are the one-on-ones with my direct reports first. And so to make sure that I'm having meetings with them that are productive. Make sure that you have a career conversation with them. Make sure that you know where they're going and what's their long-range plan, where are the stumbling blocks, when do I have to go yell, when am I good cop or bad cop? And you want that interaction to be more informative for both sides and to talk through problems that have solutions. So that's sort of my first priority. My second priority is having discussions with my boss, mostly because he's got 15 direct reports because of reasons, and so getting time in his schedule is hard. Yep. And so talking to him or to Parker or to Mark, it's like, okay, well, that's next in importance. Mark Benioff's schedule is a whole other thing. And then the next thing is generally checking my metrics, checking how the team is doing, working with project managers to see what's off track, and then readjusting to say, are my metrics right? Are my methods right? Is everything in order? So I do that. Then it's long-range plan stuff, and then it's coding. So Thursdays is no interruption Thursdays at Salesforce, and that's when I keep track of things, because I run the productivity team, and one of the things is if you are not using your product, you don't know how it's working. And so I keep my finger on the pulse by actually checking in code and saying, oh, does the build still suck? The answer is yes. It still sucks. So let's go fix it. Or, oh, we're going to come up with this new microservice-y RPC thing with testing. And it's like, oh, let me go try it out. And then you're like, oh, that really works. It's super awesome. Because one of the best things about being a manager is just like putting it in neutral, not paying attention for 2 months, and then it's done, and it's exactly what you wanted. And you're like, that's amazing. That's why I love being about a manager, because you don't have to do it all yourself. And so that's sort of the priorities. But look 2 weeks out and say, what are you doing? Are you having like a 4-day offsite with your team? If so, why? Yeah. And if you're doing it too often, why are you doing it? There's nothing that is draining from an IC as having a meeting where you really want to be on your phone playing Candy Crush the whole time. So just keep that in mind. Right. And so there you go.
Thanks, Stephen. By the way, I have your Thursday evening picture there.
That's actually from Sam's in Tiburon from a couple of years ago.
Good.
Sam Bailey's on the right there. He lives in the UK.
Thank you. And Ritu, I looked at your profile, and the rapid growth within Salesforce, and even before, almost a promotion every year and a half. How, for people in the room, like how do you prepare for each leap? Because it's a journey, it never ends. And how do you do that?
So there are two types of projects that stand out to me. The first kind of projects that I've taken, and frankly, it's never been like, hey, this is going to be that moment which is going to be defining my next promotion. If you go after that, that's very difficult to align yourself towards just getting promoted. The way that I operate is around projects or products. So two types of projects or products. The first, the ones that are not fun, but hard. And no one wants to pretty much touch them or have touched them and have not been successful at them. And they're not glamorous. It's going to be a lot of work. It's going to be long hours, and I'm unafraid to put in long hours. So if you have to put in 120-hour weeks, I've done it. And those projects they don't have instant gratification, but over a period of time, people will see that you are able to deliver. And once you prove that you are able to do that's hard, and people recognize that. The second is they're not easy, but they're the more visible and more front and center projects, and they have a high exec visibility. You get to go to Mark, you get to do high pressure things. And both of those projects that I've done, the first one was actually at Oracle when Siebel was coming in and PeopleSoft, and we integrated all of that with Oracle. And I was managing the integration of all of that, and I led over 150 people integration team. And yes, it was hard. 6 years, 10,000 people, do the math. Every morning I had to get into a room with 60 execs, everyone who was anyone, and present, okay, what is broken today? And people would
That's
pounce
too many
at
meetings.
me. It was a lot of meetings, but people were like, okay, we need to know what's broken today. And they would pounce at me, and I remember one day, they were like, this EVP came up to me, and he leads all of financials now. You can look him up. He told me, this means nothing to me. You make no sense in a room full of 60 people. He said that to me, and I was a group manager then, and I was in tears. And this senior director was like, it's going to be okay. And I promised myself that it is going to be okay. It was a hard project. It was not fun. I got through it. And the first project I got here, which was when Lightning, if you have seen what is Lightning, when it was getting launched, I got that project to, again, do the same job and roll out 45 teams, 500 plus developers, getting it out the door, highest quality. And I used that moment never to repeat myself. And that was high visibility, so I translated those skills. Mm-hmm. And a year later, Mark himself gave me an award for the work that I did on Lightning. And you get to turn around things, but I think it's important to be able to pick things that are not fun, and you never know what it'll lead to.
That's great.
And it's not a demotion. I keep having to tell people that when I stop. Oh, you were having meetings with Mark every week. And I was like, you don't want that. Yeah. You do not want meetings at Mark's house during lunch every week. Yeah. Ever.
The first time is good, and then after that.
Yeah, and it's do what's right. Be a deep diver, I think is what we call it. Like people that, instead of trying to be like a territory builder, instead own an issue and solve it dead. That's also in the trailhead.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you. Well, we have a minute and a half left, but I would like to give our audience a chance to ask a question. Do you guys have any questions? All right.
Come up.
Yes.
Because we have to give you a microphone so we can hear you.
I don't have a mic runner today. I am the mic runner.
And I got to go to meet the developers after this, but some people might be able to stay.
So my question, I think a lot of people at the level of dev are looking at you guys and thinking, do I really want to do that? It looks awesome. It looks powerful. It looks fun. I love the people aspect, but I also love the code aspect. Do you guys miss what I'm doing now? And is there something in your new world that, I don't know, makes up for that?
That's what Thursdays are for, man. I got to use the product. She doesn't have Thursdays. I get Thursdays. Yeah, I miss it. I miss being like, this is screwed up. I should fix it. But then I also realize that I have a 7-month-old kid and I have to prioritize.
Yeah, it's tough, right? Like, I mean, you have these moments of angst where, you know, you're like, what value am I really bringing here, you know, at various times in your career when you're so far from actually the how and getting it done. One thing I do when people come to me who are toying the idea of getting into management, I always say, because for the first couple years, you know, the first couple years at Salesforce, I was very hands-on, and I did a ton of work. So you can start to kind of get your feet wet. And what happens is, if you're going to grow as a manager, at some point you're going to have to let go, right? And if that really hurts, and you're just not as into the management stuff, like I had found myself.
You can go back.
You can go back. People go back all the time.
I have
Super
4
supportive.
people who I went to, and I was like, "You don't want to be a manager, do you?" And they're like, "No." And I was like, "Well, then let's stop that." And now you're an architect.
Yeah.
And that's
I'll
why
get another manager. It'll be great.
Yeah, exactly. So you can kind of find out, because I ended up really loving it, and I didn't think I was going to love it. I was very resistant to getting into management.
Being an executive is way better than being a manager. I highly recommend not being a line manager, but that's just me.
If you can just jump from a developer to executive. And we have, I think we're over time, but last word from you, Ritu, in terms of that. What do you miss and what makes up for it? And then we'll wrap
I
up.
think we all naturally like to do things that we really enjoy, and there'll be the way I look at it is, look at the things you really like doing in your job, and what really puts a shine in your eyes. And if there are those things, can you live without doing those things? And going back and thinking, okay, I had a really productive day. Because for me, the day that I have this really good mentoring session or coaching session that really, you know, the person is like, oh my God, I did not get this feedback ever. I go home and I'm very happy about, okay, I changed someone's life or career. And it may not see the fruit immediately, but maybe in 5 years, and people have come back to me and said that the advice you gave me 5 years ago was the best advice ever.
That's awesome.
And when I do that, it just makes my life, it makes me so happy. And you have to think, really, is that how you want to be? And if not, then, you know, architecture or just being an IC is very amazing.
Great. Thank you so much. And thanks to our panel. And thanks to our attendees. Thank you so much. And hope to see you again.